Welcome back. On this day in 1100, William II of England, known as William Rufus, was mysteriously unalived when an arrow pierced his lung. Today we will be going into the background of what happened, what actually happened, and then talk about some theories. Now, quick disclaimer, this happened nearly 1,000 years ago. What actually happened in the New Forest on that day in 1100, we likely will never know. William II of England was born in 1056 to William the Conqueror and Matilda of Flanders. He took the throne in 1087 when his father, William the Conqueror, died, also in an accident, although with him it was a lot less suspicious. And then he ruled for 13 years. He did a okay job as king. He had a nasty temper, and if you crossed him, he was known to be very brutal. However, he did keep England stable, and he established Norman control in England permanently. Now, for the events of the day, we actually have to start in the previous night. William II, on August 1st, 1100, was awoken with a nightmare of the devil telling him that he was looking forward to seeing him the next day. William then swore to do better as a king and as a person. However, he would not get the chance. The party awoke around 10 a.m. local time and went off for a hunt. It was a slow start, only managing between them and a couple other parties in the New Forest 9 game. And then, as the hunt was coming to a close, a stag went by, and William Rufus, also known as William II, wounded the stag. Now, he had given up 4 of his arrows to his friend Sir Walter Tyrrell, saying, "Good arrows for the good archer." Those words would actually come back to be very ironic, and I'll tell you why in just a moment. Now, Tyrrell did manage to notice this stag, although the party that they were in had gotten split up earlier in the day. And Tyrrell and the king ended up being alone together. Tyrrell aimed for the stag. The bolt bounced off a tree and hit the king in the lung. Rufus instantly fell from his horse and managed to break off the shaft in the process. However, it was lodged in there tight, and there was nothing anyone could do. The king just lay there on the ground, and Sir Walter Tyrrell fled, informed another member of a separate party of the accident, who rushed over to Henry, and Henry ran right to his brother's side. Oh, wait, no, he didn't. He ran off to establish himself as King of England, leaving the king abandoned as Sir Walter Tyrrell fled to France. Now, for years and years and years, it was written that this was just a genuine accident. But given Henry running off to France as opposed to, or running off to Winchester to be crowned king on August 5th, and the fact that Sir Walter Tyrrell fled, we don't really know. As I said before, Tyrrell was alone with the king. Anyway, the same day that Henry was being crowned king, William II was found by some locals and taken to Winchester, where he was buried and where he still remains today, possibly. I will get into that when I'm discussing the aftermath about what actually happened to him. And so, that is all the information we've got. Literally. This happened so long ago that not much exists. The arrows likely completely disintegrated into the ground. Anyone who would have known has been long dead. And a lot of the manuscripts may probably have not even survived. But now the first theory that we're going to be discussing is that he was assassinated by a group of pagans. This is quite possible. It is very close to a religious day in paganism. And oh wait, that's it. That is literally all we have for this theory. Theories against it show that William II was actually sympathetic towards paganism, so much so that he actually got himself excommunicated from the Catholic Church. And the fact that the branch of paganism that people are referring to as the ones behind it, there's no historical record whether or not they even existed. There's nothing saying that they existed. But that is the first theory. Another theory is that the King of France was somehow involved. Now, William was bitter enemies with France, and William had managed to invade Wales earlier in his reign, and it is believed that he may have been planning to go on campaign against the French, and the French were planning against the English. Philip I of France, I always want to say Francis I, and I know it is not him, but anyway, Philip I of France being involved is also unlikely. This is because, well, for one, there were no Frenchmen in the hunting party that were known. That is something that would have probably been written down. For two, the French probably did not want to have either Robert Curthose or Henry I as king. And the fact that France had a much bigger and more powerful army than England and would have likely beaten them in battle anyway without having to orchestrate something. Another theory is that this was a genuine accident. Hunting accidents were common. William's brother, Richard, had died in a hunting accident before. And just 3 months before the king, his nephew died in a hunting accident in the same forest. The likelihood that 3 would have happened from the same family is actually surprisingly high for the time, and given how often they went there, because this was the royals' hunting ground. And in addition, it was not just a dangerous sport, but it was probably the most dangerous activity regularly taken part in by the royal family at the time. Jousting is probably a close second. If you want to see a video on Henry VIII and his stuff with jousting, let me know. I would be more than happy to do a video on that. Now, the other theory is that his brother Henry was involved. Brothers William, Henry fighting. Yeah, not much has changed, has it? This is probably the most likely theory, is that his brother was responsible for the accident. That probably was not an accident. It just seems a bit too convenient for this to happen when Henry's brother Robert was in France. And the fact that no one questioned him about it at all. Henry had the most to gain from this, and it actually appeared that a civil war between William and Henry was about to go up, with Henry desperately wanting to be the King of England. And doing it where, and this did avoid that civil war from happening. Robert Curthose was also involved, but never challenged Henry I for the throne. The main thing going against it is the fact that fratricide at the time, not as much as today, but still, is majorly frowned upon, and any suggestion of it could have led to the current king's deposition. But I do still think that this is the most likely theory. The other things that I've heard from this that I'm not going to go into because they're just so unlikely. William II ordered it himself. Very unlikely that one would do that, as he actually seemed to be quite a happy man and did not get all his stuff completed. Robert Curthose was involved. That's probably the most likely of the unlikely theories, but still, nothing connecting him to it. The Eastern Roman Empire was involved. Again, nothing connects them to it. It didn't happen. There's enough evidence that it did happen. William faked his own death and fled to France. That also very likely didn't happen. The other kings that possibly but probably didn't escape, Edward II, Richard II, Edward V, and Charles I, all had major escape rumors. There's none of these for William. Okay, so just those, very unlikely. But this is something where you have to come up with your own conclusion, because we will never know. Now, in terms of the aftermath, the king was taken to Winchester, and later on, a few hundred years later, all the bones from the cathedral were scattered. Recent DNA testing has identified 23 people, one of which could be definitively identified as who the remains belonged to. Emma of Normandy, Queen of Canute the Great and Ethelred the Unready. Now, it does appear that some long bones of the king do remain, but the skull is missing. And that is all the information we have about this royal tragedy or something more sinister. Information from the time is very scant. What we would likely need to know in order to get any more clues for this is one of these four things: where the hunting lodge in the New Forest was, where the accident took place. There is a stone marking there at a place that claims to be the site. However, this wasn't put up for about 700 years after the incident. Who else was in the party besides William Rufus, Walter Tyrrell, and Henry I? And is there any evidence suggesting Walter Tyrrell wrote about this incident? If there's anything he wrote himself about this incident, that would be key to knowledge. Thank you all for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and let me know what royal mysteries you'd like me to cover in the next one.